Yo, what's happening, guys? It's your boy Bit Burn. You're tuning into Bit Burn 305 TV right now. And this is part 2 of top 10 college football teams of all time. This video don't need no introduction. Let's get straight into it. At number 5, we got 2008 Florida Gators, who went 13-1 that season. They will end up going to the national championship and winning that and becoming national champions. This team was led by Tim Tebow and coached by legendary head coach Urban Meyer. Everybody know how good Tim Tebow was at this time. Tebow was Tebow mania, man. He was all everywhere, man. Some notable players on that team include Percy Harvin, the Pouncey twins, Aaron Hernandez, Joe Hayden, Tim Tebow himself. Offense, the Gators had 6,231 total offensive yards and 82 total offensive touchdowns. And also, I forgot to say, this is the year Tim Tebow won the Heisman. This season, Mr. Heisman himself, Tim Tebow, threw for 2,746 yards. He threw 30 touchdowns and threw only 4 interceptions. The leading receiver for the Gators this season was Murphy Lewis. It wasn't Percy Harvin. I thought it would be Percy Harvin too. But Murphy Lewis had 38 receptions for 655 yards and 7 touchdowns. Percy Harvin came after that with 40 receptions for 644 yards and 7 touchdowns. Also, Tim Tebow was the leading rusher for the Gators this season. Tebow had 792 yards on the ground for 12 touchdowns. Percy Harvin came after that with 668 yards on the ground and 10 touchdowns. After an early September loss to the Ole Miss Rebels, Tim Tebow gave his famous speech. If you don't know the famous speech, I know you have seen it. Everybody's seen it. Yeah, Tim Tebow gave his famous speech. And after that famous speech, the Gators went on a 10-game win streak, leading them to the BCS National Championship versus the Oklahoma Sooners, in which they won 24-14 to become national champions that year. Dog, this is crazy. 24 Gator players from that 2018 played in the National Football League, and that's crazy, bro. Like, man, that team was stacked. That team was full with some dogs, man. But let's get to the next team. Before we got the 2015 Alabama Crimson Tide. Of course, you know these guys was going to be there. These guys this season had a top-ranked defense and was powered by an offensive force in Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry won Heisman this year. Some notable players on this team: Calvin Ridley, Derrick Henry, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Damian Harris, Eddie Jackson, O.J. Howard, Ruben Foster, and Jonathan Allen, and plenty more. On offense, these guys had 6,422 total offensive yards and 55 total touchdowns. The starting quarterback for this team was Jacob Coker. He threw for 3,110 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 8 picks. The leading receiver on this team was Calvin Ridley, who had 88 receptions for 1,019 yards and 7 touchdowns. And of course, the leading rusher, Mr. Heisman himself this season, Derrick Henry, rushed for 2,219 yards and scored 28 touchdowns. Man, damn, what the hell, bro? Did y'all see Derrick Henry high school stats too? This Alabama football team was crazy this year. They was ranked number 1. The Crimson Tide lost early in the season to Ole Miss. Man, why Ole Miss always beating everybody early in the season? But after that loss to Ole Miss, these guys will not lose another game. The offense was led by, of course, Heisman winner Derrick Henry, and they dominated every team. They went to the national championship where they was in the shootout with Clemson. They will end up being Clemson 45-40. 7 players this year will be drafted into the NFL from the Alabama football team. Man, that team was stacked, dude, dog. But let's get to the next team. For the number 3 team, I was doing my research. I was doing it hard. You know, I could have went with a lot of teams, but this team I felt like deserves it, and they earned a spot on this list. So at number 3, I'm going with the 1995 Nebraska Cornhuskers. Even though I wasn't born at this time, I heard great things about them. I read, I researched. It's all great things about them. These guys were 12-0 this season. This team was great. They was ranked number 1 nationally, and they would beat every team. They would beat every ranked team too. This team was led by a dual threat quarterback, Tommy Frazier, at the time, and I heard he was going crazy this season too. Some notable players on this team includes Tommy Frazier, Aaron Graham, and Jared Talmadge. On the offensive side of the ball, these guys had 6,119 total offensive yards, and I really tried to find how many touchdowns they had, but I really couldn't find it. But for how many yards they had at this time, it's crazy during that time because they were playing in the 90s, which, you know, they ran the ball a lot. But the star of the team, Tommy Frazier, will throw 1,362 yards that season, 17 touchdowns, and only threw 4 picks. And the leading receiver at this time was Chester Johnson, who had 367 yards. I'm telling you, this is back in the days, so yeah, you know, they didn't get 1,000 yards and all that. The leading rusher this season will be Amon Green, who had 1,086 yards and will score 3 touchdowns. Tom Frazier will come behind that with 604 yards on the ground. The Cornhuskers averaged 53.2 points per game, and the defense only allowed 14.5 points per game. Nebraska will beat 4 teams that finished in the final AP Top 10 rankings. They will beat national runner-up Florida Gators, number 5 Colorado, number 7 Kansas State, and number 9 Kansas. And they will end up winning the national championship that year. Yeah, like I said, I was doing my research. I was looking for the number 3 team. I see everybody was discussing this team, the Cornhuskers, and I was like, let me do my research on them, man. And they was a great team. But let's get to the next team. My number 2 team, you know who I got, man. I got them boys from the Bayou. I got the 2019 LSU Tigers. This team probably had the most prolific and greatest offense in FBS history. This team was led by Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow was going crazy. Joe Shiesty was going crazy. Notable players on this team include Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Derek Stingley Jr., Grant Delpit, Devin White, and plenty more. These guys had 8,561 total offensive yards and 93 total touchdowns. Damn, that's mind-blowing. Joe Shiesty himself will throw for 5,671 yards, 60 touchdowns, and only threw 6 picks. The leading receiver this season was Jamar Chase, who had 1,780 yards and 20 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson will come behind that with 1,540 yards and 18 touchdowns. Clyde Edwards-Helaire will rush for 1,448 yards with 16 touchdowns. Led by quarterback Joe Shiesty this year, who broke FBS records, having a breakout season with 5,671 yards and 60 touchdowns. With it, both came Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, who had 80-plus receptions. Dude, them boys was burned like butter biscuit. Like, LSU offense scored a record 726 points, going 15-0 that season, going to the national championship, beating Clemson 42-25. And check this out. There are 26 players from that 2019 LSU team that are on active NFL rosters. Man, the number 1 team. Y'all boys already know who's the number 1 team. And the best team in college football ever is the 2001 Miami Hurricanes. Who else y'all thought would be number 1, man? Come on, man. This 2001 Miami Hurricanes team was different. This was the best team. They were filled with dogs, both on offense and defense. Notable players on this team includes Ed Reed, Andre Johnson, Sean Taylor, and Sean Taylor was Ed Reed's backup. Dude, that's a wild team. Also, you have Brian McKinney, Jonathan Filmer, Jeremy Shockey, and plenty more. On the offensive side, these guys had 5,003 total offensive yards and 49 total offensive touchdowns. This team was dominant. The defense only allowed just 9.8 points a game and beat 5 top 15 opponents by a combined score of 236-72. I know I'm supposed to read stats, but I'm not going to read these guys' stats because you know the aura of this team. And this team was just too much. They had too much dogs on the field, man. That's why they considered the best team ever in college football. Listen to this. 38 players were drafted from that 2001 Miami Hurricanes team. Bro, there would never be another team like that 2001 Miami Hurricanes team. I don't gotta explain a lot about this 2001 Miami Hurricanes team. Because what's understood doesn't need to be explained. But that's my top 10 college football teams of all time. If you don't like my list, like I said earlier in part 1, don't argue with me, argue with your mama. But this is your boy Big Burn. Thank you for tuning in to Big Burn 305 TV. Like, subscribe, and share with friends, man. I appreciate it, man. And your boy is out. Pow!